In March 2017, Kong Skull Island officially opened in theaters, earning over $560 million worldwide. In Vietnam, the film hit record high sales of $7.5 million. Director Jordan Vogt-Roberts decided to choose Vietnam as the central location to shoot the $190 million Hollywood blockbuster. 70% of the film's set was shot in Vietnam, particularly in Quảng Ninh, Ninh Bình, and Quảng Bình provinces. On March 13th, Vietnam's Minister of Culture, Sports and Tourism appointed American film director Jordan Vogt-Roberts to be the first foreigner playing the role of Vietnam's tourism ambassador. His tenure lasts for 3 years, from now to 2020.
Well, I think the first problem is that you say that as though Vietnam needs to look better. Vietnam already looks amazing. This is the most beautiful, wonderful country on the planet.
Right.
And so, my job is not to make it look better. It's simply to let people know how incredible it is.
Our top Vietnam guest today is none other than the director of box office hit Kong Skull Island. His name is Jordan Vogt-Roberts, and he's here with us to fill us in on more of the behind-the-scenes snippets and also share more about his new role as the tourism ambassador of Vietnam. Hi, Jordan.
Hey.
Thank you very much for joining us. First of all, congratulations on the success of the box office hit Kong Skull Island. How has it been?
It's been amazing and surreal. When you're making a movie, it's a very intangible thing. You know, you talk about it and people are like, oh yeah, it's a movie. And then suddenly to go from being this thing that only I see to this thing that everyone sees, and you see billboards and commercials and trailers, and then people are in the theater watching it. And then for it to be sort of critically well received and to make over $500 million, like that's a dream, because you slave away on these things for 2.5 years. It's been 2.5 years of my life. And so that's been amazing, but then specifically being able to bring it to Vietnam, where half the people I talk to are proud because the rest of the world is seeing Vietnam, and they're like, oh my God, we're so happy people are discovering how beautiful our country is. But then half the people that come up to me have this reaction that melts my heart, where they say, I didn't even realize how beautiful part of my country was. And so to go from that sort of start to finish process of that film and to have that reaction, it's been incredible.
Great. I mean, obviously, you just mentioned that it was a very laborious process, 2.5 years, and I heard rumors of you not shaving because you were so devoted and invested into this film. Tell us about this laborious process. How difficult was it?
Look, making movies is hard. Over 2.5 years, and for me, going from a tiny movie to a giant movie, you go through every possible human emotion on the planet. You know, you go through joy, you go through pain, suffering. Like there are moments where you say, this movie is going to be trash.
Yes.
Like I'm ruining this. And
any moments where you thought, I just can't do this anymore?
Never, I just can't do this. But there are moments where you say to yourself, is this worth it? Them sacrificing so much of my life. And the moment that you absolutely know it was worth it is when you start to show it to people. And when it's out there. And then you have people coming up to you and you see how much it means to them, either on a inspirational level for a young kid being like, I want to make movies, or oh, look at this whole new world, or just someone in the middle of their day who's having a bad day saying, I had such a good time. And so you absolutely have moments where you say, can I do this? I think that's natural. I think if you didn't have those reactions, then you're not being honest with yourself.
How about your proudest achievement throughout this process?
I'm proud of the fact that the movie has a voice. I think that for a giant blockbuster to have a sort of as much of a voice and an edge is very rare. And I'm proud of the fact that people go to the film and they say, I felt like I was 12 again, or it's a big sort of, it's King Kong, but it's something you haven't seen before. There's crazy stuff in this film. So I'm ultimately very proud of how weird I think we made the film and how I think the film was rewarded because of those things. But honestly, for me, I'd say one of my most proud moments is breaking down those barriers and being able to come to Vietnam. Being able, you know, like I was banging this drum saying we have to shoot here, and everybody said, like, let's go to Thailand. Let's go to the places where people have done this before. And and luckily, I had an amazing sort of studio behind me that said, you know what? Like, look how passionate Jordan is about this. Like, clearly he sees something in this place. Let's figure out how to do it. And so breaking down those barriers and how Vietnam ultimately looks in the film, and then that subsequent reaction that people had here and the pride that they have for it, that's my proudest moment by far.
About 50 residents of Hoa Lu, Ninh Bình played the role of indigenous people in the movie Kong Skull Island. These local residents continue their role not in the movie, but in tourism services in Chang'an. Their meeting with director Jordan over a year ago left them with many memories.
Bắt đầu chúng tôi mới đi đóng phim lên đến nơi, chưa đi hóa trang bao giờ, hôm nay đi hóa trang ra xong mình cứ tưởng không nhận ra mình.
Rất vui vì mình đã có cái đóng góp rất nhiều cho bộ phim này.
Đạo diễn của phim Kinh Công thì trẻ tuổi mà rất là giỏi, xếp đặt mọi người là từng vị trí một.
Returning to Chang'an to visit the filming location and the residents who played indigenous people in the film is what Jordan wished to do during this trip to Vietnam.
You were great. Your eyes, very expressive. The moment where you say goodbye is one of my favorite moments in the movie.
50 extras from the film waited from 6:30 a.m. to greet the director. Their feelings for him haven't changed after more than 1 year.
Đạo diễn trông rất là vui vẻ và cũng là béo hơn năm ngoái.
Thì là đi đóng phim với đạo diễn đến giờ năm nay mới gặp lại là rất vui mừng, cảm thấy là rất là gần gũi như là người nhà với nhau.
Chu Xuân Lem, the village head in Kong Skull Island, invited Jordan to his house. The meeting helped the director understand more about the simple countryside life of rustic Vietnamese farmers.
Thank you for letting me borrow him for several days to put him in movie.
Nhà cửa này là nhà cửa các cụ sinh hạ tôi, như vậy là 4 đời rồi. Nhà này được gọi là nhà thờ các cụ tổ tiên này.
I'm very proud of what you do in the film, and I'm excited one day for him to be able to grow up and watch you on a big screen and say, ah, that's him.
How was that process of working with the local residents? Any memories that stuck to mind?
It'd be very easy in the United States for those extras who and those actors who have gone through such intense, like, hours of makeup. It'd be very easy for them to be very frustrated or annoyed by the end of the day. And one of the days we didn't complete all of our work on time. So we had to turn to all of those villagers, all of the local Vietnamese, and say, we're really sorry, but tomorrow you guys have to come back. And normally, if we were shooting in the United States, people would say, "Oh," you know, they'd be bummed out. They'd be annoyed. They'd be like, "Really?" And you'd probably have some people who wouldn't come back. Some people would walk away, but it'd be like a burden. Here, as soon as we announced that, everyone just went, "Yeah!" Like they were so excited to be able to come back, and that energy. Honestly, like, we were so tired. We were here at the end of our shoot, so me and Bree and Tom and the crew, everyone was tired when we were here. And honestly, the energy of the people here made us perk up. It reinvigorated us. It re-inspired us, where we would look at how enthused they were. And for all of us who were tired or were sick or were ready to go home after shooting this film for so long, the local crew and the people that we brought in to sort of act with our actors, that energy was so pure that I think it truly just reminded everyone, like, right, we should be so lucky to be here.
Tell us about, when did you first hear about Vietnam? How did it become your, pitch for a film?
It started with two things. One was I wanted the movie to feel real in terms of the locations. The movies that I grew up on were movies that went to new locations and real locations. And so you felt like you were discovering things. You felt like you were being taken in new places. And so I very specifically did not want this movie to be like a lot of modern movies, which is a lot of green screen, or like shot in studios, and then it's this like kind of computer-generated fantasy world. I didn't want that. So that kicked off a process where we had an incredible location team, and I said, we're looking all over the world. And so we did months and months of research. We went on trips all around the world. We went to Iceland. We went to, we went to all over. And then we went on a big trip in Asia. And I'd found Vietnam online.
Do you remember the first image of Vietnam online that you saw that kind of struck you?
It was probably some stuff in Ha Long Bay. But then I would say the bigger thing that really jumped out was just the shapes of the mountains. There was something about the sharpness to them, the way that they sort of just like jut out of the ground, and sort of form these peaks. And it's just, it's such an extreme way that, like American mountains are very,
kind of slopey.
Yeah, very slopey and go on for a while, but then you have these like very intense just peaks. And then on that trip, me and my location scout, we went up to like the Tu Lan area, like, in Quang Binh, and I stepped out of the van up there, and you're in those sprawling fields that then have those mountain ranges, and you have this like intense saturation of the green, and then you have the rock formations jutting out of that. And suddenly, in that moment, I said, this is where we're going. We have to go here, because it didn't feel like anywhere else I'd seen. There was just something, it's just, sometimes you see something that just, you can only describe as like magical.
Yes.
And that's sort of what it was. And so that kicked off the very long process of truly figuring out how we were going to do this and how we were going to come here. During the entire shoot, it was funny because we were in Hawaii, we were in Australia, which are essentially beautiful places. And we'd go to these locations, and the cast, Tom Hiddleston or John Goodman or, John C. Reilly, these guys would say, "Oh, look how beautiful this is." And every time they would just they'd be like, "Ah," and then they'd look over at me, and I'd be, because I would just say to them, "I know you think this is beautiful, but wait until we get to Vietnam." Because I had been here so many times up until then. So when we were shooting in Hawaii and Australia, I was like, I was just waiting to get here. And then once we finally landed here, the entire cast just was like, "Oh, you were absolutely right." They heard me just harping on it over and over and over again. And then once they showed up here, like John Goodman, one of our first days, we were in like the Trang An area, and we had to take a boat. They had to take a van from the hotel to set, then they had to take a boat to another boat, and then it's a smaller boat, so you take that boat under a cave, and then you have to take another boat. And John Goodman, who's a legend in the industry, turned to me and he said, "That was the most beautiful ride to work I've ever taken in my life." And he was serious.
Yes.
We're shooting in swamps, we're shooting in water, we're shooting really intense things. And, when we're in the Van Long Marsh, up in Ninh Binh, I have Tom Hiddleston and all these actors up in water up to here. And normally, on a set like that, you're cruising the water too. So then I'm in the water. So normally people would be very cranky. They'd be like, "No more takes, we want to go home." But everyone had this sense of what we were doing was special, because you would just look around, you would look at the mountain ranges, you would look at, we just knew what we were doing no one had done before, and the appreciation and the quality of the local crew and the people that we were working with here, and the pride that they already had in what we were doing. We just, we all felt this great responsibility to make sure that the stuff we shot in Vietnam the best.
Thank you for sitting down with me in the studio. That was a lot of fun. It was very hot and sweaty in there under those lights though, so I want to take you to one of my favorite places in Vietnam.
Yes, I'm super excited because Jordan has actually promised me a bird's eye view to one of the most iconic backdrops of Kong Skull Island. So we're about to embark on this little adventure now on this seaplane. So let's go. Yes. We're now inside the cabin of a seaplane overlooking one of the most gorgeous scenes here in Vietnam. As you might have already guessed, Jordan and I are now in one of the most iconic places here in the country, one of the attractions that a lot of people come to visit when they come to Vietnam. We are here in Hạ Long Bay. So Jordan, tell us about your first impression when you came to this place.
I remember landing and getting in a boat and just going out into the sea, into the bay, and just looking at how endless it is. It's just full of the most incredible shapes and colors. I don't think anywhere on the planet actually comes close to truly feeling as expansive and beautiful and full of sort of scope and wonder as Hạ Long Bay does when you land.
How does the landscape here in Hạ Long Bay kind of fit into the storyline of Kong Skull Island? Or was it the other way around that the landscape here inspired the storyline?
As much as possible, I tried to be inspired by locations, and that's what sort of drove the plot. And so looking around at locations like this, it just became so clear to me so quickly that I could put this on screen and to foreigners, show them a brand new landscape, show them something they had never seen before, and really like remind them how beautiful this earth is, you know, because we live in a world where everything is computer generated. But I also, you know, from talking to people in Vietnam, when I would land here and I would talk to people in Hạ Long Bay or Ninh Binh or whatever, and I would say, do you know how beautiful this is? Like, do you realize like how incredible all of this is? Like, you could take a photo of that boat going into the bay right now, and that's like a photo you could hang on your wall for the rest of your life. And that was the process of me falling in love with Vietnam and fighting to say, we have to shoot this movie here.
With scenery such as Hạ Long Bay quite the crowd pleaser in movies like Kong Skull Island, do you see kind of promoting filming locations as part of Vietnam's tourism agenda?
As soon as we landed here and as soon as I started to fall in love with this country, the goal was always to make something that was as striking and as disruptive and as sort of transformative on screen as when people went to see Lord of the Rings and they saw New Zealand for the first time and you said, wait a second, where is that? Like, it's all real and you know it's all real. And, you know, prior to Lord of the Rings, people I think vaguely knew what New Zealand was, but they had no idea the scope of it, the way the landscapes changed, the way they varied from one to the next. And, you know, I think Vietnam's sort of a similar thing where people all have a preconceived notion of what the country is, what the history of the country is. But I think that there are so many different, incredible and vast, textured, beautiful locations filled with incredible people and incredible food that, to me, it was a no-brainer.
As the tourism ambassador now of Vietnam, what do you propose to do in this field in terms of promoting more Vietnam as a future filming locations for filming industry in the world?
I want to do multiple things here. I want to bring a full season of a TV show here that mixes American actors and Vietnamese actors and American crews and Vietnamese crews in a way far more robust than anything has so far. I'm working with the government right now to bring other filmmakers, friends of mine, colleagues, producers, writers, talent. I want to bring people to Vietnam. Partially as just a trip to say, look how beautiful this place is. If you love it, post about it on social media. If you write a story about it for a magazine. And then I want to bring another movie here. And I'm already talking to other directors and colleagues and friends of mine and saying, you have to check this place out.
Right after the movies Kong Skull Island opened in theaters, Ninh Binh province tourism sector enjoyed tremendous growth thanks to indigenous village tour. Quảng Bình province authorities successfully negotiated with the filming crew to put up 3 statues of Kong's hands at Cha Noi Cave, In Phu Lake and Chuột Cave. Quảng Ninh province took advantage of the film to promote the beauty of Hạ Long Bay.
What tourists want is to see a destination before they come. Now, you can invest a lot of money in producing ads or producing YouTube videos, but people need to find that content, right? But when you create a movie in Vietnam, people are there in the cinema anyway, right? They're there to enjoy the movie. And if they happen to discover that Vietnam is a beautiful place full of rich natural attractions in the process, that's an incredible moment.
Before Kong Skull Island, Vietnam did take advantage of the film industry as a way to attract tourists. Some of the movies are Indochina and The Lover in 1992 and The Quiet American in 2002. Developing tourism through film scenes is considered a more effective measure as it provides interaction with visitors.
Những cái tàu, những cái nhà của thổ dân này ấy, thì nó tạo hình ảnh cho khách. Khách đi đâu thì thích có cái ảnh nó lạ lạ.
What I expect, something that I can relate to, but also something which is quite full of imagination. It's very nice to give a more international view of really tiny sections of Vietnam. So then you can see how they've been portrayed in movies.
Besides tourism, another positive impact of Kong Skull Island is an opportunity for Vietnam to become one of the destinations for international filmmakers.
Về phía tỉnh thì chúng tôi nghĩ rằng là cái việc quảng bá qua phim ảnh, qua các cơ quan thông tấn báo chí như là các cái hãng phim nước ngoài hay là các cái đài truyền hình nước ngoài như là TBS, NHK, CNN thì chúng tôi thường xuyên là tạo điều kiện hỗ trợ về mặt con người, hỗ trợ về mặt hậu cần tại chỗ và chúng tôi không thu bất kỳ một khoản phí nào.
Chúng tôi sẽ tổ chức một cái đội công tác để cùng với Robert Jordan và nhóm của ông ấy đi khảo sát các cái điểm đến tiêu biểu và khác biệt của Việt Nam để có những cái dự định cho những cái dự án làm phim sau này của ông ấy cũng như các cái nhà làm phim của Hoa Kỳ.
What are your thoughts on, Vietnam kind of seizing this opportunity of big films such as Kong Skull Island coming to Vietnam as a way to promote tourism? I mean, they just opened up a new tour in Ninh Bình to go to these filming locations.
I think that the tours that they set up in these places, great. But don't ever forget that people will be coming to Vietnam. Yes, maybe people will have seen Vietnam because of Kong. And maybe that might initially spark their interest. Already I have so many friends, whether they're friends, families, actors, producers, directors, who say, I want to go to Vietnam now. Like, tell me what my trip should be. So already there's so many people that I think are interested in coming here. And I've talked to travel agents, and people have said that since the movie's come out, the amount of interest in the country has skyrocketed, which is great. But don't ever forget that the thing that will make people fall in love with this place is not Kong, it's Vietnam.
Yes.
And so those to me are a small piece that, yeah, maybe someone comes here and they want to take a Kong tour and whatever, and that's great. But the rest of it, like the things that made me fall in love with this country are not the Kong tour, and so people should just never forget that those things are incredible.
What does Vietnam, aside from the scenery, have to offer filmmakers, do you think?
There's two ways to talk about that question. One is outsiders and foreigners. There's an incredible amount of production value in the countryside and within the cities that people could shoot an endless amount of films here. And in a way that it is not exchangeable or interchangeable at all for any other part of Asia. If you really sort of, I think, understand how specific these cities are and the countrysides are, you can't, Vietnam is so specifically Vietnam, and that's a reason enough to come here. But I think when people talk about the film industry, or when they talk to me about it, a lot of people always gear it towards outside productions coming in. And I would love to, and already I know that there are multiple productions since our movie came out that have called us and said, okay, how was Vietnam? Should we shoot there? Et cetera, et cetera. People are now interested. There's a lot of things that go with that in terms of now making it a accessible and easy thing for productions to come in. And like I said, I want to bring a full TV show and start breaking ground in that way. But I would hope that people don't forget that truly what will really put this country on the map is then the local filmmakers and the local artists and the local talent exploding on a global scale, on a global level, where you look at what happened with Indonesia and The Raid, a film like that, where or Thailand and some of their martial arts films with Tony Jaa and things like that. Like, it only takes a couple things before everyone starts seeing the voice of the artists here. Mm-hmm. And I think that the industry here truly can explode in a positive way very soon. But those voices just need to be fostered. And all the time, people are like, oh, well, what can you teach the artists here? And it's like, in fact, the artists here shouldn't try and mimic what we're doing in Hollywood. What's going to make the rest of the world pay attention is by them being themselves.
Yes.
And so there are ways to help facilitate what they're doing and make that easier. There are ways to make it, to give them more support and to remove some of the more difficult aspects of filmmaking that can be made easier in ways that we do in Hollywood. But they need to follow their own voice. And by following that voice, that's when I really think that the soul of this film industry will be exposed on a global level. And so I think it's a two-pronged thing. One is bringing foreign productions here and continuing for those productions to show Vietnam in ways where people say, oh my God, what a beautiful place. And then the other part of it is really fostering and letting the talent here thrive.
The United Nations International School of Hanoi, or UNIS, was one of the places Jordan chose to come and inspire young people.
Let them know that their dreams are possible. Whatever you want to do, you can go and chase it. And the first step is very frequently the hardest step. And I wish that I had someone telling me that when I was younger, but I didn't.
The only thing in Hollywood that successful people have in common is that they didn't stop.
After speaking before 350 high school students, Jordan became the special guest of this film class with 30 members.
Just today I talked to a kid who said, do you want to be a filmmaker? And he said, no. And I asked him why he was in a film class. And he said, well, I do want to be a filmmaker, but I'm afraid to say yes because it's really scary. And, you just need that extra push sometimes to say, oh, I can go do this.
So you guys are already ahead of
Linh Vũ and Brianne Griffin have studied filmmaking at UNIS for 2 years now.
I really enjoy films, and I think that the talk today is very helpful for us and very inspiring as well. I like how he's very much talk about the style. He really emphasize about your own personal style into the work that you do, and that I think that is important.
How he just taught me that working hard and just really following your dreams could really end up you could be really successful. It really motivates me to work even harder and potentially pursue this in the future.
Recently, director Jordan Vogt-Roberts announced a scholarship fund for Vietnamese art students worth $90,000 per year starting from 2018. A part of the fund comes from his pay for directing the blockbuster Kong Skull Island. Each year, at least 2 Vietnamese students will be selected to study art in the US.
Let's go back a little bit. When did you first develop an affinity for film and cinematography?
Look, I was always a dork and a nerd who thought cinematically. At a very young age, I was always watching movies. I loved going to the theater. That was like my church. And I loved going to the video store and renting movies and just sitting at home. And I always consumed film. It took over. When I saw Star Wars and when I saw all of these movies at a young age, there was just something about it that just transported me and it captivated me. But growing up, even though I always I was making little short films and stop motion videos with action figures in my basement. But growing up in Detroit, even though I had very supportive parents, the idea of doing anything in Hollywood seemed impossible. You know, it seemed like it's a pipe dream. If anything, it's like a horror story. I didn't want to be that guy that like goes out to Hollywood and then fails and comes back embarrassed, and then eventually I just said, I love this so much, I have to try this. You know, I went to college and I did not go to college for film at first. I was trying to go to a normal university, and I just couldn't really decide what I wanted to do. And so eventually I just said, you know what? I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this film thing and see what happens. And I went to school for it.
You talked about, your plans to work with some of the filmmakers and directors and new talents that you have had a chance to see here in Vietnam. What are your advice for the young upcoming talents?
Don't compare yourself to anybody else. And if you have an inkling of an idea to say, oh, I want to be a singer, I want to be a filmmaker, I want to be a writer, I want to be whatever, I want to start a nonprofit, like whatever that thing is, just go and start. Because what you do right away is not going to be great necessarily. Just letting people know that like it's a process. We live in a world now where everything is on demand, right? You can have everything when you want it. You can stream your movie. You can get whatever you want when you want it, more or less. And any artistic endeavor is not that. It takes time. You have to grow. You have to evolve. You have to be honest with yourself. And so, to like really young kids out there, it's just go and pick up that camera, and it doesn't matter if it's an iPhone or an old flip phone. It doesn't matter. Go and pick up that pen and paper. Go and pick up the paintbrush. Go and start writing your proposal for the nonprofit you want to start, or the company you want to start, or the tech startup you want to start. It's all there. Be who you are, and that's what will make you great. If you have a dream and you have something that is like burning inside of you, like just go and try. I just hope that while I'm here, I want to try and like create a scholarship and offer film programs and workshops and just like education for the arts and things like that.
Today, Jordan is meeting with some friends in Ho Chi Minh City, but this won't be any ordinary motorbike ride. Together with members of charity group called Meals on Wheels, Jordan is handing out meals to homeless people across the southern metropolis.
For me, I love this place and I want to find any way that I can to sort of give back, and this is just another perspective on me starting to understand the way people live their lives and the way people live different lives here.
Anh ấy rất là giản dị và cảm thấy là anh ấy rất là hào hứng và rất là vui vì mình đã giúp được những cái mảnh đời như vậy.
Meals on Wheels group leader Emily Hồng Nhung, who is also Miss Vietnam Tourism International 2016, is Jordan's guide for the night.
Mình đưa anh ấy đi từng nơi và những người nghèo ngủ trên đường, và mình cũng chỉ Jordan là khi thấy họ ngủ thì mình để phần cơm kế bên, thì Jordan làm rất là tốt. Jordan nói là lần sau Jordan muốn chở Emily đi bằng xe máy và Phát, Emily sẽ là người Phát và Jordan sẽ là người chở.
From a similar idea in Singapore, Emily Hồng Nhung launched the Meals on Wheels initiative in 2015. The group of 20 members works with restaurants to provide around 500 meals to homeless people around the city each month.
Cũng sống ngoài đường, nhưng mà có khi từ thiện cho cũng mừng lắm. Có khi cơm sườn nè, rồi cơm đùi gà nè, đủ thứ hết trơn.
Vui vẻ, có cơm ăn nó no.
The night left a deep impression on the American director.
It's very touching just being amongst the people and seeing how important and meaningful just a meal is. A meal that costs 50 cents can completely brighten someone's day. And I just hope that more people would have experiences like this so that they'd realize that a very small amount of money and a very small amount of action can actually greatly improve somebody's life.
After after the film release, you had said in an interview that you had fallen in love with Vietnam. Tell us about this newfound love.
Every time I came back, every new little detail I learned, every new experience I had, just was more and more captivating to me. And every time I started going home to LA, I started to miss it here. Or I started to almost feel like I wasn't going home. Like it felt like, you know, and it wasn't just like, oh, I'm not on vacation anymore. There was something deeper happening. And for me, it became this thing where I think what it truly boils down to is the people, which is to say, I think that the people here, for me, have a graciousness and an appreciation for life and a resiliency and an energy that I find missing from a lot of my interactions in America. And there's something so endearing and powerful about that to me, where every time I started coming back, I just found myself more inspired. And I found myself falling deeper in love with the people and the food. And then you go, you know, every time you go to a different city, you realize all of the small little idiosyncrasies and details between them and how they differ and how they're similar. And I loved it. People would ask me, like, why? Like, what is it about that place? And it was just, it sort of ended up boiling down to the simple fact where I would say to people, I just feel more at home there. Like, I feel more at peace there. I feel more, I feel like I'm living my life.
You're going to settle down in Ho Chi Minh City, as we know. Tell us about this plan.
Well, I'm having this interview with you, which means that I've left my house in LA half packed. So everything
you've already packed?
I've started, I'm halfway. But I really just, you know, I'm gonna have to go back and forth for work. There's things that I'm gonna have to go to the United States for, and I also need to be there to not just be working, but also, I think, sending this message about Vietnam there. But I just want to treat it more like this is home base. Because I'm going to have to go and travel, and I'm going to have to go and do work. And
it's the life of a filmmaker.
Right, exactly. But to me, I would rather always feel like I'm coming back here, as opposed to being like, oh, I'm coming back to LA, and then I'm going to go to Vietnam when I have free time.
Yes.
I'm coming back home here,
Yes.
and then I'm going to go and do my jobs and work and try and bring people here and things like that. And, you know, I want to explore every part of this country, but, you know, I want to be in Ho Chi Minh just because most of the sort of entertainment and artists and you know, actors and other directors and musicians and people are down there, and I really want to collaborate with them and work with them. And so I'm going to explore all over the place, but I'm in the process of trying to find a home right now where I'm going to be.
We're eating on the streets of Hanoi in my favorite, which are these little plastic chairs where they set up and they appear out of nowhere. And then you'll literally fall over, be covered in sweat, but be surrounded by bikes. And then people like my good friend Long will order food for me. And you get this chetta, which is like iced tea. And what's the name of this dish?
In Vietnamese is phở xào.
Phở xào?
Yeah.
What's that mean then?
Fried rice noodles.
Fried rice noodles? Phở xào. This is my favorite meal in Vietnam.
Now, on March 10th, you were, given this decision by the Vietnamese Minister of Culture, Sports and Tourism to appoint you as the new tourism ambassador of Vietnam for the period from 2017 to 2020. What are your thoughts on this appointment?
I mean, it's possibly the greatest honor of my life, you know, and it's a great responsibility too. You know, there's so many things that I sort of want to collaborate and work on. Now I also feel this responsibility to make sure that as people come here and as tourism grows, that the things that I fell in love with about this country are protected,
Yes.
and that things grow in a sustainable way. And to me, to be able to have, you know, a little bit of a voice now to say, tourism will come, and there's so much money that will come with that, and there's so much exposure that will come from that. But think about your grandchildren. Think about your country and what you love about your country. And just make sure that as these things grow, they grow in a sustainable way where all the things that you're proud of or that you want your children or your children's children to experience are still here when they're here. You know, and so to me, like there's so many things that I'm proud of with being given that honor, and there's so many sort of projects and initiatives and things that I want to be a part of and help bring projects here and help continue to expose the beauty and wonder of this country. But to me, to have that little bit of a voice to say, great, like, let's protect what is amazing about this place.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you very much, Jordan, for
Thank you.
sharing your stories. And we wish you the best of luck in continuing your role as the tourism ambassador, but also in your, you know, future career. And hopefully you'll continue to collaborate with more people here from Vietnam.
I hope, I always say that, you know, I am a guest in this country, and I appreciate everyone's sort of willingness to have me here. And I just want to continue to do things that, you know, to me, it was just looking at the mountain ranges and places like Ha Long Bay and finding the people. To me, it was such a no-brainer of like, oh my God, like, I just want to help show people what this is. And so I just hope that people continue to allow me to be a guest here and to collaborate with them. And I just hope that they know how much I love this place.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Then that also wraps up this edition of Talk Vietnam with Jordan Vogt-Roberts, sharing more about his film, but also his continued plans to stay here in Vietnam and contribute more. And that's it for this edition. We'll see you more next time here in Talk Vietnam. Goodbye.